Hello, hello, Salt Lake City. Wow, you guys are a good-looking crowd. Yeah? Hey, I think that Ben and Wade and Andrew and the whole front team did a really amazing job with this conference. What do you guys think? Yeah? Yeah. They did an incredible job. And it's really an honor to be here. I am always just super humbled when I'm in the presence of so many smart leaders and practitioners and people that just really care about the products that shape and change the lives of those around us. My name is Mariah Hay. Those of you that don't know me, I am a VP of Product for Pluralsight. We are an online education community for technologists. We also have a really amazing platform that allows people that care about technology within their business to understand where the skills of their learners are and help them elevate them. But enough about that. Today I'm really here to talk about the product management misconception. It really kind of made me feel good. It validated what I was talking about. When everybody kept talking about, people don't understand what a PM is. Companies don't understand the role. They don't understand the scope. Product managers themselves, particularly ones starting out or people trying to break into the industry, don't understand what's involved. And so that's what I'm here to talk about today. And I'm going to break it down in kind of 3 ways that, give you guys some bite-sized chunks to take home with you and really empower what you're thinking and how you think about PM. So the first is really a state of the union. Like, how does PM and product management exist today? What are people saying about it? How is it looking in organizations? And then we're going to break it down into kind of the second part, which is how I personally think the anatomy of a PM should look. There are different things that PMs need. People always ask me about this. The first is kind of the knowledge they need to come to the table with, foundational things. The second are tactical skills. And the third are the soft skills that we kind of forget about sometimes. And then I'm going to talk about, once you have this amazing PM, how do you empower them within the organization? What does the organization need to look like? What do teams need to look like? And how can they take these superpowers and really make magic with the product? So I'm actually going to start out with lesson 1 here. I'm going to test your knowledge. I want you to shout out why there is such a wide variation in PM skills. Who knows? Why is it so confusing? So many needs. Different business models. Yeah, backgrounds. Those are all really good answers. I like to think all of those answers roll up to the fact that product management as a discipline is pretty new, right? When you think about B2C software, that really started to surpass B2B software within the last decade. Before that, it was more B2B, but with the advent of B2C, business customer segments versus all customers, all people, it's a much larger group. So now we have escalated all of these apps that we're trying to build. We have way more teams. There's more pressure to do it faster. There's different financial models. You've got kind of startup world going. And when you think about the fact that we all now carry around these little computers in our pockets, and we're using apps on those things too, it really has multiplied the needs of how we organize to build product. And so product management is this newish role, and we're really struggling to figure out exactly what it is. We know there are all these different parts that need to happen to make good product, but the industries we're trying to learn from, these are the industries that we're borrowing bits and pieces, and why we confuse product management with project management. In the past, we had brand, marketing, strategy, business development, technology, QA, client services, research, innovation, communications, people managing all these different things. But right now, it's a brave new world. So I wanted to pause and kind of level set about what my personal interest is with product management. Because I don't come from a PM background either, like many people. And it kind of all started right here. I'm going to take you back to September 2015. Any of you who know me well know I am like this big, massive design nerd. And I geek out on the process of user-centered design, what it should look like on teams, how you bring it into organizations. And I was in my heyday because I was getting to speak about it at Fusion Day. And unbeknownst to me, I was speaking with some pretty special people who would play a bigger role in my life. You can see I've got them highlighted here. Nate Walkingshaw and Gilbert Lee. Some of you might know them. And I met them here, and I was, had an 11:30 slot right before lunch. I was getting to talk about this, and after I was done talking, this guy came up to me, which was Nate, and he comes up to me and he's like, "Oh my gosh, Mariah, what you're talking about. We are doing this. We're doing this in Utah. There's this company called Pluralsight, and we're doing directed discovery, and these are all the components, and it's easy to teach teams, and they can move fast, and they can be autonomous, and we have human-centered design." And I was kind of like, sure you are. Because, I had a lot of baggage that I was bringing to that conversation. As he was telling me these things, I was thinking back through where I was currently in the industry and what I had experienced, and I knew that when the rubber hit the road, that companies that talked about user-centered design were doing little more than paying it lip service. And so I didn't really believe him. It wasn't his fault. But, Nate, he's patient, and he's very persistent. And he kept talking to me over the next couple weeks about Utah and how amazing it was. And I think that my reluctance to believe him became kind of a personal mandate for him to get me to Utah. And he did it. I agreed to come out and visit the teams in Utah. And I came thinking, I'm going to use my user research skills. I'm going to really dig into what they're doing. I'm going to prove them wrong. And so I spent 2 whole days with all of the teams, talking to team after team after team after team, looking for things like how they were engaging with their users, what the synthesis looked like, what the testing looked like, how their teams were built, what was the collaboration, was there even culture to support this, what was the autonomy level. And by the end of the second day, I'm driving back downtown. The office is in Farmington. And I've got this feeling in the pit of my stomach. You know that feeling when you're like about to go over the edge of a roller coaster? I felt sick and excited. And I got back to my hotel room, and I walked in the door, and my partner, Joe, was sitting on the bed. And I said, "What do you think about moving to Utah?" And because I was pretty excited at this point. In fact, I was really excited to see this happening in a company at scale because it's what I truly believe in as an individual and practitioner. And I was excited because of, let me take you back to all of the things that I had encountered to make me not believe Nate to begin with. So I started my career out as an industrial designer. And for those of you who don't know what that is, it's a person that designs physical product. I worked with mass-produced products produced at scale. But the cool thing about industrial design is they're pretty user-centered too. And a large part of my graduate degree was understanding how to go out and speak to users and see what their problems were so we could design physical products to solve those needs. And so when I started my career out, I worked at this small company called Briggs & Riley Travelwear, and I was essentially a PM. I was their product development coordinator. But I actually did everything. I was like a one-man crew. I did the designs. I worked with the factories. I looked at materials. I looked at the life cycle of the product, sourcing, communication. I liaised with marketing. But what I really didn't get a chance to do a lot of was go talk to users. And I knew that was wrong. I was one of those outraged, right out of graduate school, into industry going, wait a second, they didn't teach me to do it like that. And it was eminently frustrating to me. So I stayed there for a while, and right about that time was when the app need and the B2C software industry started to take off. And a lot of my colleagues decided to switch into digital design, and I dabbled in it a little. But I have to remind you, when I was in grad school, people had those Nokia phones, and the interfaces were just like big pixels, and there wasn't the interaction design there is today. And so how did I do that? I decided to join a startup where they didn't know what I didn't know. And I became their project manager and interaction designer, again, kind of a joint contributor where I was doing everything. Wireframes, requirements docs, timelines, coordination, working with the developers. Once again, though, there was very little room for user experience design. And it was because we had 2 co-founders, and they had very clear vision about what they wanted. And they often argued with one another. It was never quite the same. I ended up, after that, going to a small agency, because now I had some meat on my resume. And it was advertising, interactive advertising. And once again, I kind of found myself in a PM role, even though I was a project manager. I was also a product manager, kind of in all of the senses. And once again, same thing. We were getting orders from the clients. We weren't able or empowered to go talk to people. And that was it. Like, that was my tipping point. I'm like, if I could throw this right now and get away with it, be like, yeah, I'm done. I'm done with this. So I thought, OK, I'm going to find the perfect job. And this time, I decided to move to Dallas, Texas, because I'm like, I'll go anywhere. Just let me do user research. Let me design it the right way. And so I took a job with this company, 7,000-person company, large enterprise, healthcare company, wanted to do an internal IDO. And this time, I got to do all the research I wanted to my heart's content. And it was a really great experience because I learned it really, really well. Unfortunately, the company was not set up with the kind of culture that nurtured this kind of behavior. And within 2 years, without support of leadership, it fell apart. So I thought, well, if I'm going to do this and have it sustainable, I guess I'm going to have to build it myself. So I moved to AMC Health. The previous company I had worked at, our cross-functional teams that designed employed subject matter experts. One of them became the CTO at this company, and when he joined, he realized they had no user experience, so he brought me on board. And I said, awesome, I'm going to go build my team my way. And so I did, except I wasn't building the organizational design, and there were still product owners, and there were still stakeholders. And so I was simultaneously doing all the user research that informed what we were going to create, and the leaders of our branches of the different parts of the company were telling our project owners what they were going to go build. So it created friction. It was about that time that somebody proposed to me that I go work for them instead. That I had a really great opportunity to go build a branch of a new digital development agency, a large digital development company out of Denver and Grand Rapids. So I did that in Dallas, and it was super exciting. And I'm like, awesome, I finally have autonomy over all the positions. All the positions are mine. And so I created this role, this design strategist role. And it's basically how we talk about PMs today. And it was about that time that I ran into Nate Walkingshaw and Gilbert Lee, and Utah happened. And I was so excited. So excited because I saw the PMs doing all the things that I wanted my design strategist to do when I was at Universal Mind. Customer calls, highlights, user narratives with the team, designing, validating, iterating. They were helping the teams build. They were monitoring releases, measuring it. They were telling the story of the value of the product internal to the company, and they were collaborating with their teams. And I thought, goodness gracious, like, they're not box checking. This is such a relief to me. They were actually doing human-centered design practices. And I started to get really suspicious. I'm like, is this an anomaly? Like, is this where we're skating to the puck in product management, or is this just a thing that's happening at this company in Utah? So I decided that I better check it out, right? Like any good design researcher. Gotta go check it out. Make sure that the pattern you're seeing is actually the pattern that's happening in reality. So like any good researcher, I started here at Google, and then went to Wikipedia. So Wikipedia, of course, describes product manager in a way that we don't like it, at least the way we've been talking about it the last 2 days, we don't like it. They say that basically the C-suite, did I just mess up my mic? Can you hear me now? Cool. That the C-suite gives direction to bestow it upon the project managers, and then they go and execute it. That's kind of my takeaway from this. So I was like, all right, this isn't helping me. So maybe I should go look at product management software. If you're creating software for a product manager, you should know what they do, right? I don't know this company. They just have really good SEO, so I'm going to pick on them. And so their role of the product manager, I am reading verbatim, is similar in concept to a brand manager at a consumer packaged goods company. I don't know about you, but this isn't hitting the mark for me. So then I thought, okay, well, people are hiring product managers. How are they describing these in kind of job descriptions? So I was scouring lots of companies, particularly looking at kind of Silicon Valley-ish companies. And Lyft here. Lyft talks a whole lot about soft skills, but not really about like what you're actually going to be doing in the job. And I found that was the case with a lot of them. They also talk about years of experience. Like that really is a key indicator. So I was really at this point like, oh man, Utah? No Utah. Is this real? And then I'm like, okay, well, what is the education area talking about? This is where I got my first breath of fresh air. Turns out in education right now, if you want to be a project manager, a product manager, then you have to kind of come by those skills with School of Hard Knocks. You either go to a boot camp, and there are some about that seem good. I saw one online, General Assembly, that looked reasonable. And there's tons of certs out there, though, and it tends to be people that have had computer science backgrounds end up going and getting certs in product management. This University of Washington one was particularly interesting to me because of the 6 to 9 month program, a whole 9 weeks was dedicated to user-centered requirements. And they knew what they were talking about because the first line says, learn methods for understanding customer context. And then they say identifying needs. And then they say market requirements. And I am like, hallelujah, somebody is getting it. The education area, like they're catching up. This is fantastic because that means this is where it's going. And so I'm like, you know, they're kind of thought leaders. Who else are thought leaders in the area? And so I started scouring thought leaders. I'm like, why didn't I start here to begin with? I don't know. Wikipedia seemed better, but I was wrong. Then I ran into, I don't know who this person is, Sue Racy. I think I'm saying her name right. But I'm looking at, she has a lot of thought leadership stuff out there online. And under the core activities of product management, she says, number one, what its users are like, the problems and pain they face, and the constraints they operate under, et cetera. Number one thing a product manager does. And I'm like, okay, this is awesome. I need to look at more thought leaders. I also landed on somebody I did know, Marty Kagan. You probably recognize this diagram. And the part that stuck out to me in his article about what exactly is a product manager is a good product manager must be experienced in at least one of these circles, passionate about all three, and be conversant with practitioners in all of them. And I'm like, okay, done, moving to Utah. I was right, it's all good. All right, moving on. So next, like, I'm in Utah, and have been working at Pluralsight for 16 months. And I have a lot of people come up to me and ask me questions about it. And so I'm going to ask you guys first, what are 3 things that make a PM successful? Who wants to volunteer that? Leadership. Listening. Communication. That's all I'm going to get. That's good. We've hit a couple. So those are all true, and I think they all roll up under this one. The person that said listening, like, I wish I had candy to throw you. Good job. But I really think they roll up to these, and I'm going to go in and get really granular on these because I know these seem like very high level and conceptual, but there's a reason that I chose this specific language: listening, analysis, and prioritization. So people say, when people come to me and they go, you know, Mariah, I think I want to be a PM. PM sounds really interesting. And I go, why do you want to be a PM? And they say things like, I'm a people person. I like strategy. I want to be a leader. And, you know, those are fair answers. Shows you're a little green, but they're fair. And so it gives me a good context to have a conversation with them about what a PM actually is and does. And so this is how I kind of turn the tables on those things. I go back to the original 3 things that I think are important. The true anatomy of a PM. Instead of being a people person, you need to be a multi-dimensional listener. And this means you have to be able to go and listen to people in context and understand them. You have to be able to understand your team and come to the context that they are in and listen to what's happening in your industry and your company. A multi-dimensional listener. The second thing, people say, oh, I love strategy. Strategy is great. Well, I think that word is okay, but strategy doesn't really necessarily mean inclusive of a team. So I like to say analytical thinker. As a PM, it is your responsibility to take all of the information that's around you and really analyze and think about it globally, but you're doing it in the context of a team and help lead them and pull them along the way. The third thing is instead of being, I want to be a leader, because you're leading in a way, but you are not the decision maker on what is being created. You are part of a team. You are the facilitator of that decision making. So you have to be really good at then being able to execute when that decision is made. You are in charge. You are leading prioritization of what happens, how it gets rolled out. So those are the 3 really important things. So let's get really nerdy on these things. Because you can be like, yeah, Mariah, that's great. That's very high level. But what are the tactical things that I can take away today? Well, I like to break each of these down into 3 areas: knowledge, practical skills, and soft skills. Knowledge is the stuff that you learn in school, that you learn in a program, that you learn from doing. And you bring that to the table with you in the job. You have to have that foundation. Practical skills are the day-to-day things that you will be doing with your teams. These are things you have to be able to execute and have the skills to be able to do. And then third, last but not least, soft skills. Soft skills is interesting. HR likes to say soft skills are a culture fit. Coworkers like to say soft skills are not being a jerk. You have to do both. So, to be a good multidimensional listener, you have to be able to be a really amazing qualitative research method practitioner, being able to go out and talk to people. You have to really also understand org design, both the org design within your company and how those roles operate so you can work with those people, and org design within the context of the people that you are interviewing, particularly in software that involves some kind of business structure. With practical skills, you have to be able to go and seek context. You have to be able to do things like write discussion guides, know how to ask questions, actually conduct user interviews and lead a team to help with that. Contextual inquiry, so maybe you're not asking questions, you're sitting there and watching people, how they work in order to create something. Create narrative sessions with your team, which is taking that information and breaking it down with all of them, and then actually co-designing. I'm not saying as a PM you need to learn to push pixels, but you should be able to put a Sharpie on a piece of paper and understand some very basic information architecture and where a button should go on a page. Soft skills, you need to be humble. You need to be excited about what you're doing. You are the cheerleader for your team, and I'm going to talk about that under the 3rd column. You need to be emotionally intelligent about the people around you, and you need to be a relationship builder. Next, we move on to the analytical thinker portion. As far as knowledge, you should really be learning quantitative research methods. You need to understand data sets. You don't have to be a data scientist, but you should be able to take a data set and put it in a spreadsheet and look for patterns. You need to understand business strategy. You need to understand analytics and your industry and market. This is the stuff that Joseph was talking about in the panel. Under practical skills, you should be able to go in and execute that secondary market research, know how to do it. Do research synthesis, break it down, look for patterns, work with the team, do critique and iteration on concepts that you're working on, and then also look for metrics and be able to wield those to make product decisions. And under soft skills, you really need to be able to co-create. Last but not least, we've got informed prioritization. Under knowledge, you should come in with interaction and system design knowledge. Again, you don't have to be a computer scientist, but you have to know enough to be dangerous and to be able to talk to your dev lead. You need to understand technical implementation, because how can you prioritize without understanding the implications on the technology side as your team builds things? You should know processes, methodologies, and frameworks, how the dev team is actually going to work, how work happens within your company, how things are funneled. Are you working on a small autonomous team, or do you have a funnel that's going into a larger team? Are you competing for resources? How do you make those trade-off decisions? Under practical skills, you need to be an amazing communicator. You need to be able to write, you need to be able to speak to things, and you need to be able to do it in a succinct, bite-sized way so that people get what you're saying. You need to know if they're understanding you. You also need to be able to prioritize, again. And under soft skills, you need to be a teacher, because you have all this great, rich value that you found, and you need to be able to communicate that out to your sales org, to your marketing org, to the rest of the company, to arm them with the message of the value that you are bringing the consumers. Because we all know that it's really not about the product, it's about product plus consumer and what that makes them. And then you have to be the cheerleader. So I have really amazing colleagues. And another one of our product VPs, his name is Mitch Dumke. And I was talking to him the other day about this. I said, I'm writing this talk on being a PM. I said, what is the hallmark of a good PM? And he said, good PMs, they get the job done. But great PMs, they can take all of this information and package it up and channel it to make the team really excited about what's going to happen next. If you deliver on this, what metric is it going to hit? How's it going to change the value? How's it going to change the platform? So you can keep up kind of the excitement on the team as you move through these iterations so things don't stagnate. And I thought that was really good advice. So let's move on to lesson number 3. Got one last question for you. Where is a product manager in a modern organization? Can anybody tell me? At the table. Yeah, that's good. It's not what this says, but it might change it. Where else? Where do they sit? Pardon? With the team. A good answer. So product managers, I like to say, they sit everywhere. There should be product managers everywhere. Product manager is not just a product function role. There are problems that are being solved in other parts of the organization. It could be marketing. It could be strategy. It could be partnerships. Product marketers should be everywhere because if you have product marketers everywhere, then information proliferates because they know to talk to each other and they can connect really well. So just to wrap up today, this is my third section, is, if they're sitting everywhere, like how do we look at kind of KPIs of how org design works and what product managers are doing? There are 5 key metrics that I normally look at. I look at this for UX designers too, although different things are on the chart for them. So scope, strategy, research, design, and staffing. In companies that are outdated, the way they approach product management, the scope for product management is just looking at little parts of the experience. You've got a product manager, they're tackling this little thing, that's theirs, but they're not really kind of doing the whole thing or cross-functional things. As far as strategy, they're really not part of the strategy. Research, they're probably doing some usability testing, but it doesn't go much beyond that. They've got maybe an individual designer that might be looking at it. They might be doing the design themselves in the case of kind of what I've lived through. And then as far as staffing, you've got these kind of generalist roles. But as you move into the magic of a progressing organization, the scope starts to become complete experiences that they're tackling. All of a sudden, instead of not helping to create what it is, which is the absence of strategy, they're gathering requirements. Now, they're gathering these requirements, and they're informing some of them with the ethnographic research, which means they're going out and talking to some people. There could be a design team involved, hopefully. And with staffing, you have a multidisciplinary team. It's not one person doing everything. It's a group that's working on a complete experience. Now, the true magic is when you can push it over the line into modern. Modern's really excited because now all of a sudden you're working on these integrated experiences. PMs are talking to each other, magic's happening, and they're not siloed into like their part of the product. They're looking at all of the product, and they can use their magical prioritization skills across all of this understanding. It takes a very good PM to do this. Strategy. They are creating the vision to execute these strategies. They are telling and advising the company C-suite, this is what we are seeing. This is the direction that we could go. Within research, they are not just doing ethnographic research and talking to people, they are wielding quantitative research. Quantitative research is really exciting because now we've got some great data products to plug in and monitor that we didn't have a few years ago. As far as design, you've got a whole experience team. It's not just designers. Maybe you have content folks on board. You have people, depending on what the product is, it could be a whole range of people, subject matter experts you bring onto the team. And as far as staffing, a particularly poignant KPI is you have some kind of executive leadership sitting at the top of the C-suite, like supporting all of this and making it happen. I've worked in a lot of organizations that don't have that C-suite leadership, and let me tell you, managing up, while it's possible-ish, it is a hard road. And so if you have that executive leadership, things can just happen and things can fly instead of justifying like, hey, we need $1,000 to fly and talk to like 10 users. It's a hard conversation to have every so often. it's better to just have it expected that this is part of how you work. So now that I've armed you with these 3 things, I am going to ask these questions again. So why is there such a wide variation? It's a new role, yes. All right, I'm going to say it, then you're going to say it. Product manager is a newish role. One more time. Good, yes. What are the 3 things that make a PM successful? Mumble, mumble. We're going to say it together. Ready? Listening, analysis, and prioritization. Woo, yeah. You guys are getting some energy behind it. Number 3, where is a PM in a modern organization? Yes. I am so excited to be here today. Thank you so much. Have a great rest of your week.